I had my final critique for the fall trimester of 2016. So final critique we have at the end of each trimester, and you show all your work that you've been working on, obviously in the atelier for your programs, like your figure drawings or paintings and your cast drawings or paintings. But then you also bring in work that you've done outside of the atelier. So it's pretty much all the work that you've made in that time frame, so you can really see and get a big picture, not just for your instructors to see, but so you can also see everything lined up, which I think is really cool because you have everything that you've worked on up on easels and spread out. And so it then becomes a lot easier for you to see your strengths and weaknesses. And the other cool thing is you usually see a progression, which normally you don't, because, well, I have a lot of work, so it gets shoved back into sketchbooks or paintings stacked up. So I think it's really cool to have everything out so you can see how you're progressing. So here is what Matt and Magda said that I did well. They said, looking at my paintings, that it looks like I have a good sense of temperature shifts. And that made me feel really good because I remember my first paintings at the atelier that it came up in my past final critique that my temperature shifts were kind of weak and I needed to work on that. And actually, before the Ravenswood Atelier, when I was doing studying painting in college, one of my teachers told me that it seemed like I didn't understand temperature at all, and so I asked him if he could. I said I agree, and I said that I asked him if he could explain to me what temperature is and how I can get better at it. And so he pointed at two spots in my painting and asked me which one's warmer and which one is cooler. And I looked at it for a while and I said, I'm not sure, I don't know. And he just was like, well, I can't. And he just said, well, I can't explain it to you. Temperature is something that needs to be innate, and if you don't understand it, there's no way you can teach it to someone. And so when I went to the Ravenswood Atelier, and they were saying the same things, like you could work on your temperature and make it better. And they told me different tools that I can use, different ways to physically look at my painting, and the different ways to think about looking at my painting. And I worked really hard on getting temperature because I really wanted to. So them saying that my temperature shifts are looking really good made me feel really good. They also said that I'm keying my paintings really well to show space in my paintings. And so keying means finding your contrast. So it's not just value contrast, like your lightest lights and your darkest darks, though that's a big part of it, but also keying for color, so finding the most colorful to the most gray, also edges, sharpest edges, softest edges. So it's just finding your big contrast in pretty much every area that you can think of. And so if you're keying your painting right, you should be able to show a lot of space. And that's something that I definitely work on, because I want there to feel like there's a lot of space in the painting and not like the figures smushed up against a background. So that's good. And I also said that I'm getting better at painting and drawing arms, which made me really happy because in every critique, that's pretty much what the weakest point in my work is: arms. Arms I still find really tricky, but I'm working on them. There's a lot of complicated anatomy in them. And also I was reading a book that Solomon J. Solomon wrote on painting technique, and he said that really to look at an artist and how they paint and draw arms really shows you who can be a great painter and who's just average. And ever since I read that passage, and Matt and Magda have been saying like, well, your arms are pretty weak, I've been really pushing at it. And now things that they said that I could work on to get better. They mentioned that I could be working on the smaller planes that make up figures, and Matt was saying that with working on a figure like Delon's back, that I had done that painting, and he said that all of the little plane changes and the bumps of light and shadow that are going down his back didn't completely make sense. And so he was saying that if I use a mirror, and if my hand is my mirror and this other hand is the painting, that you get really close up to your painting and you look into your mirror at your painting at an angle, so it's abstracting what you're looking at, and to imagine that there's a little ant crawling up the painting and to imagine that there's a little ant crawling up the figure, and to make sure that the ant would be going up and down and around kind of the landscape of the figure. And so if you're imagining the ant, you're just being hypercritical that every brushstroke and bump that you're putting in should really be representing all of the bumps that make up the figure, and nothing's arbitrary. And so they were saying to make sure that the color, value, and temperature shifts of each little plane change is really making sense for what it's actually representing. And with this, they were also saying that I could be working better on my color mixing. And so Mom just said with the example of my painting of Maddie, she said that I probably could have made the painting a bit more colorful. And she said it almost looks like a white powder was placed over her. So she said I need to work on my color mixtures and making sure that I'm getting them as vibrant as they appear in life. And that is something I definitely do want to work on, because I feel like I have a tendency to gray down the figures. So I definitely want to be working on color. And in addition to that, Matt was also saying with color mixing to make sure that I'm not over mixing my colors. So when I'm pulling different colors to make a new color with the mixtures, if you over mix the paint and you're spreading all those paint particles really evenly, it can give a tendency to, or it can make it look like the color's getting muddy. And especially for shadows, you don't want to do this. So you kind of mix as much as you need to get a unified color, but also where you can still see the separate bits of color, so you can still, so that the color that you're mixing is looking more colorful. And I just have a habit of mixing for a while and then stopping, and I need to break that habit of just like mixing for such a long time. So that's pretty much the gist of my final critique, and here are all the paintings and drawings that I showed for it.